With the end of the First World War, the foundation for the Second World War was already laid. A man was rising in the world, whose madness, stubbornness, and arrogance meant everything to him. This brutal dictator of the 20th century had no habit of listening to anyone. To him, dying was better than losing. This dictator's name was Adolf Hitler. A king of tyranny and cruelty, Hitler is a figure we all hear about from childhood, whether as a hero to some or a villain to others. But in reality, he was a deranged man. Hitler believed in the Nazi ideology. To put it in simple terms, he believed in the Aryan theory, and under this belief, he sent millions of Jews to their death. What exactly was Hitler's Aryan theory? Was Hitler Aryan? What did he think of the people of India? What is the connection between the Nazi symbol, the Hakenkreuz, and the Indian swastika? Let's try to understand all these questions. Hitler's Aryan theory. On April 20, 1889, Hitler was born. After World War I, in January 1920, he was appointed the propaganda chief of the German Workers' Party. In the following months, he renamed the party to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Nazi Party. In April 1920, he gave a speech to the party workers in a hall in Munich, where he asked them, "How did a handful of British rule half the world?" Before anyone could answer, Hitler himself said, "We should do the same." But during an earlier meeting, while discussing the support of Indians, Hitler had said that the British exploited India, extracting cotton and rubber from there, and forced the people to live in hunger. He asked, do they have the right to do that? The two ideas seemed to contradict each other, and the party workers didn't understand his point. Hitler answered both questions with one word, power. He said, it's all about power. The British had power, so they ruled over the people of India, and they had the right to do so because those who have no power have no right to talk about entitlement. He then added that Germany had no right because we don't have power. In Mein Kampf, he expressed this same thought in another way, saying, either Germany will be a world power or it will not exist at all. At the Munich party meeting, he asked another question, where did the British get their power from? Answering his own question, he said that the British ruled India because they were of a superior race. To understand this racial thinking, we need to examine the ideas of two of Hitler's associates, Houston Stewart Chamberlain and Alfred Rosenberg. Houston Stewart Chamberlain and Alfred Rosenberg. Houston Stewart Chamberlain was a British-German philosopher and also one of Hitler's intellectual mentors. The idea of racial superiority was something Hitler inherited from Chamberlain. Chamberlain, like many philosophers of his time, was grappling with questions of materialism and social issues. Industrialism had improved the standard of living, and at the same time, the power of the church and religion was diminishing. The famous statement "God is dead" had become popular, and ethics and morality were being challenged by science. Chamberlain believed that the solution to these issues lay in racialism. Although Chamberlain had supported racial theories long before, he became more involved after he got the chance to study Indian religious texts in 1888. In the mid-19th century, British scholar William Jones had discovered many similarities between Sanskrit, Greek, and Latin languages. He called the people who spoke these languages Aryans. This term, which was previously linked to India's Vedic traditions, was now seen as a racial identity. Scholars began to realize that several languages, including German and English, had similar characteristics. This led to the theory that the people of India and Europe spoke similar languages. The theory suggested that about 1,500 years ago, Aryans from Central Asia had migrated to India. Chamberlain advanced this theory, claiming that the first people to reach India were actually Germans, who were of Nordic, Aryan race. According to him, these people had come from the fatherland of Germany and settled in various parts of Asia. Chamberlain argued that Hitler himself was Nordic, Aryan, and that the Aryans had written the Vedas and Upanishads, bringing the world beyond materialism. Chamberlain was influenced by the caste system in India, seeing it as a logical system of racial division. In his view, the superior Aryan race was at the top, and the lower races were at the bottom. The second person who influenced Hitler was Alfred Rosenberg. In 1920, Hitler met Rosenberg, and appointed him as the editor of the Nazi Party's official newspaper, the National Socialist newspaper. Through this medium, the Nazi Party propagated the idea of racial superiority. Like Chamberlain, Rosenberg also had a deep interest in Indian history, and the Sanskrit language. He took Chamberlain's ideas further, suggesting that the Aryans who had arrived in India had established dominance over the darker races and created the caste system to keep themselves separate. Rosenberg claimed that the blue-eyed, fair-haired Germans were superior to all other races, and they were the ones who created great philosophical works like the Upanishads. He believed that the caste system was a method to keep the native dark-skinned Indians apart from the Aryans. Why did Hitler consider the Aryan race superior? Hitler believed that the Aryans were superior, which is why they were the strongest and had the right to rule the world. His ideology was based on the ideas of Charles Darwin and Herbert Spencer. Darwin, a naturalist, had proposed the theory of natural selection, explaining the origin of plants and animals. Later, Spencer extended this idea to human society, creating the theory of survival of the fittest. According to Spencer, only the fittest races or species would survive because they could adapt to the environment. Hitler used these ideas to justify his actions. He argued that the strongest race, the Aryans, had the right to dominate the world, while weaker races should be eliminated. For Hitler, the survival of the fittest didn't just apply to animals but to human societies too. He wanted to ensure the purity of the Aryan race, so they could dominate the world. In Hitler's eyes, people were either superior or inferior. According to his racist view, the Nordic Germans with blue eyes and blonde hair were at the top, while Jews with dark eyes and black hair were at the bottom. Hitler considered Jews as the enemies of the Aryan race and the source of all evil. Other societies were ranked according to their physical appearance. What did Hitler think of Indians? While Hitler's racial views were harsh and discriminatory, his opinion about Indians was even worse. Despite the theories of Chamberlain that claimed the Aryans in India were Germans, Hitler saw the Indians as inferior. He believed that the racial purity of Aryans had been diluted over time, and the Indian Aryans were no longer the same. Hitler, in fact, considered the Indian people a weak race. In his book Mein Kampf, Hitler mentions that as a German, he would like to see India under British rule rather than any other country. In 1936, addressing a political leader, Hitler remarked that Indians could not even walk properly without the British teaching them how to. He frequently used derogatory terms for Indians. He saw the British Raj as a model for how a superior race should treat an inferior one. He believed that the Indian independence movement was a revolt by a lower race against a superior Nordic race. The swastika symbol, Nazi versus Hindu. Finally, let's discuss the swastika. Swastika or swastik is a sacred symbol that originated in India. It is commonly used by Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, and other South Asian cultures to represent auspiciousness, divinity, and prosperity. The swastika was first used by the people of the Indus Valley Civilization. In the Western world, the Nazis appropriated the swastika for their own symbol, the Hakenkreuz, which represented the Aryan race. The Nazi version of the swastika is completely different from the Hindu swastika. In Hinduism, the swastika often includes 4 dots in the corners, symbolizing the 4 Vedas. The Nazi swastika, on the other hand, is a simple cross with no dots. It was often displayed in black within a white circular background. The Nazis used it as a symbol of power and conquest, while for Hindus, it remains a symbol of peace, prosperity, and spiritual well-being. Conclusion: so, this was the story of Hitler and his Aryan ideology, under which he considered Germans to be superior. Under this belief, he carried out the mass genocide of millions of people. What do you think about this ideology? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section below.